I don't know what you're doing over there for seniors. You have a, first of all, you have an excellent access program, and they run Senior Report, and it's on live right now according to the schedule. Now, nothing goes perfectly in access country, you know, but it's a good setup. You have, I hope they're not going to cut that. They have, in Dunkirk, they have essentially done some damage because they were supposed to go to the Mason Hall. They threw them out of their current studio. Well, as you and I know what happened to the Mason Hall. Yeah. it's a fond dream of the past. And the city, they're going to be looking for buildings to house the county. They lost their whole office there. Maybe they'll come over to Fredonia.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things that I've long had hoped we would have gotten the two access groups together. Mm-hmm. Dunkirk had a large number of volunteers.
Yeah.
Fredonia had some relatively good new equipment with our last contract with Time Warner. And there was always the difficulty because there were different companies running Dunkirk's system and Fredonia's system. Well, now that is gone, we have the same company, and it would certainly make sense to be able to combine the two and do a much more efficient, I can't say much better job because both do excellent work in the communities they're in. But I'd love to see us get to the point where the two are one and combining the equipment that both have, combining studio facilities, and the volunteer body that runs those kind of programs would be great.
Well, we'll have to see what happens. You have lovely parks. You have all the wonderful little things. And you have a history, of course. Lafayette actually stopped in Fredonia. And I understand he reviewed the troops that had fought in the war. He was in his 60s at that time.
Yes.
You know how old he was when he took command?
I don't know how old he was when he took command, but when he came through town, it was 1825. So it was a few years after the Revolutionary War.
Well, George Washington made him a major general, which was his, which he had held when he was in France. He was a major general. And the reason he did is partly, not that he cared about this kid, but the fact that they desperately needed help from France. They needed money and arms, and if possible, even troops. So Lafayette was their hope. Lafayette was married to a relative of the king, and his family was very wealthy. His family died when he was young and left him with trillions of dollars in today's terms. So he was quite an important person. Well, when they made him a major general to match his title in his command in France, he was 19. People don't realize he was just a teenager. Teenage kid.
But in those days, he was getting on in life.
Yeah. Well, he did actually muster quite a bit of support from France. They sent a lot of guns, for one thing. They didn't have the guns, just simple rifles. And they sent cannon and sent him money and helped out eventually. And then he went back to France, and he was put in jail for a while because he got in the wrong party during the revolution and everything. And lucky they didn't guillotine him or something. And then after a while they released him, and then a few years later he became a member of the Congress, the senator. And then the presidents invited him over to the United States.
See, we do it the other way around here. We get them into the legislature, and then in New York State we indict them all. Yeah, we indict them all.
Well, that's what's happening in the Senate. It's unbelievable. Half the Senate's under indictment for something. Gee, just the other day they announced another guy who was using one of the civic centers to the people coming over. He wasn't paying them. He was calling them volunteers and training. He was training. They cleaned the place for their training program. Oh, God help us. You know, the only honest senator over there, I think, is Kathy Young. She hasn't been caught yet. I know that.
I think you're right. She's honest, and it's a hard place to be honest. That's for sure.
It is indeed, and she has been very, very effective for Chautauqua County. She's brought us a lot of money through her member items. Which is helpful, although today she's been shut down in part because they changed the rule. But you know, today they don't quite know who's in charge of the Senate in New York. It's still a shambles. Yeah. It's madness.
When anything's that close and one vote can go either way, it certainly makes it tough to get a sense of who's in charge.
Especially when people are switching sides and picking up a nice buck on the side, you know, I'm sure, for something or the other, and becoming independent, then jumping back. It's a madness over there, madness. At least Chautauqua County, we know where we are, and we're not going to change the number of legislators either.
Well, I think that number is going to change.
You think so?
I think that number is going to change. I think the debate they had the other night was not to say no to a change, but in trying to figure out what's the right number. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out why, while we don't know what the census results are, why don't we talk about how many people a legislator should represent rather than the number we need. I haven't heard the discussion, I haven't heard the debate, I haven't heard a committee meeting sit down and say, what's the right number of people? Forget what the census is going to come out with, because we don't know that number. And we can do it sort of in a vacuum right now. We can come to an agreement that one legislator should represent 10,000 people, or one legislator should represent 14,000. Then when we get the results, we may find out that if we've already agreed to only need one for 14,000, maybe now we only need 9 legislators. I think they're debating the wrong question. The question should be, how many can a legislator represent?
Not how many
Not how many we need. Because it's always, you're asking those 25 to pick which one of the guys sitting next to you doesn't belong here 2 years from now. And go down to the question is how...
He knows that. He's not about to vote for it either.
No, and take the emphasis off of themselves and put it on how many people in the community do I need to be able to represent. And if it's a number is 10,000, then when the census comes in, we're going to know we need 13 legislators. If it's 14,000, then maybe we only need 9. As you can see, I'm predicting our census is going to be down in the 120s.
It will be. You're quite right. Yeah. That's a very accurate figure, I think. From 200,000 down to 120 in a very short time.
Oh, when I graduated from high school in '78, there were 149,000, 148,000 people in this county. Keep taxing. Keep being embedded to every spending plan and program you have, and that's where you get.
Well, sure you do.
Everybody leaves.
Of course, it's kind of a snowballing effect. More taxes, more people leave. Less people to pay. Higher taxes, more people leaving. We got a couple of calls. You want to take a call?
Sure.
I'm enjoying chatting with you, but hello, caller. Thank you for waiting. Hello. Yo-ho!
They didn't wait.
Mort hung up on him. He does that all the time.
No, the more legislators you have, whether it's the total number you have in the legislature and then the number you have in each of the communities that are out there, you start to get to the point where, with the census numbers they are, the percentage of people to representatives is really a problem. And what you end up with is it is very difficult to find people who will run for government, who will get involved and will say, this program is expendable, this program should be turned over to the private sector. It's once it's there, it takes on a life of its own, and you don't end that program no matter what you do.
Yeah, well, I hope that they come to some sort of resolution without doing away at all with the senior program, doing away with Veterans Affairs, doing away with the parks, all kinds of things.
But there's so much you can do with these programs, and you mentioned the Silver Creek seniors. Years ago, earlier in my career, I did a lot of the legal work for them, and incorporation work, their purchase of the property, their renovation and building on the property they had. They didn't do that with government funding. They didn't do that with tax dollars. They raised their money, and they were able to do it. So we know that when individuals are allowed or given the opportunity to run things, they can do a decent job. Fredonia has 4 festivals, major festivals, 5 of them actually. 4 are run by our Festivals Fredonia and the others by our Farm Festival Committee. Both are run with great leadership, and they're not government entities. They're the private sector doing what individuals getting together can do. And this is part of what Kevin Gaughan's big push has been around and trying to reduce the number of legislators in different communities. It's the idea that there are so many things that government has decided it needs to control, it needs to take care of, that if you reduce the number of legislators in these communities, they're going to let some of these things go back to allow private citizens to organize their events, organize their activities, and not have it so embedded to the government leadership and the government direction.
Yeah, you have a good setup there. You're in the town of Pomfret, and how many villages does Pomfret include?
Pomfret has 1 village, just the village of Fredonia.
So you're the same situation as Ripley and Westfield and probably somebody else. Yeah. In other words, you have a town government with all the entities, and then you have a village government with all the entities. Have you considered combining them?
Well, I'm hoping we'll get to that point. I don't know if you've had anybody in as a guest from the Attorney General's office, but the state of New York a year ago adopted a law which became effective March 23rd, which gives residents of communities a greater access. There's a streamlined process now for circulating petitions to say that it is time to consolidate or dissolve one or more governments. Right. And actually, villages or town residents can do it. the county legislature could actually take an action to put on the ballot